Good evening and welcome to Storytelling with Puck, our final Zoom call of 2022. We will, as always, start with a story.
It wasn't my fault. I did everything you asked me to do exactly the way you asked me to do it. It's probably not your fault either, I guess. Did anybody warn you? Did anybody tell you how all of this works? Yes, it's complicated. It's frustrating, yes. It's sometimes upsetting and emasculating, but if only you gave it some more time, we could get it right. We could get it right. Do you know, I still remember the day I first saw you. You looked at me like I had been painted by Picasso or Da Vinci. Your eyes glistened. Not quite a tear, but there was moisture as your mouth moved from its widened position to an astonished smile. I wanted you. You wanted me. You picked me up, embraced me, placed me delicately down, and whispered, "Yours will be the first that I see in the morning." Morning came. It was a grind to start off with, but we both knew that I wasn't like the others. There was more to me. You found it charming. I was warming up, getting to my flow. You tapped down with a force I had yet to see and put me through my paces. I was sweating. You didn't expect to see that. The shame, a brown sweat, almost solid, glopped to the surface below. We'll go again tomorrow. Nothing more said, nothing more needed. I knew you didn't blame me. Morning came. It was a grind to start off with, but we both knew that I wasn't like the others. There was more to me. You found it charming. I was warming up, getting to my flow. You tamped down with a force I had yet to see and put me through my paces. I was sweating. You didn't expect to see that. The shame. It washed over me. It covered the surface below. It ran into worlds I didn't even know existed. A tasteless stream, a wasteful waterfall. What must you think? We'll go again tomorrow. Nothing more said. Nothing more needed. I knew you didn't blame me. Morning came. It was a grind to start off with, but we both knew that I wasn't like the others. There was more to me. You found it charming. I was warming up, getting to my flow. You tamped down with a force I was becoming used to. I couldn't sweat I couldn't even cry. Nothing was coming through. I didn't know how to communicate with you. All my senses were blocked. The shame. You helped me. You fixed me. You sighed. Would I see you tomorrow? Did you blame me? Morning came. It was a grind. It was such a grind. You looked at me with despair, with disgust. You lashed out. You screamed. You didn't even bother to try. You left. I saw you every morning, but you didn't look at me. You'd had enough. You went back to her, to what you had before. You spent time with her, smiling nostalgically at what you used to know. You forgot about me. One day, many moons later, you glanced in my direction. Was this my moment to shine again? You picked me up, but your touch was not gentle like before. When you threw me down next to the old washing machine, the dirty laundry and the discarded toaster, I knew my time had come. I knew it was over, but it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. Why didn't they tell you? Why didn't they explain that to make the perfect coffee, everything needs to be just right? The beans, the grind, the tamping, the temperature of the machine, the measurements, the flow, the love. You had that once, the love. If you learned how to treat me well, I could be yours again, and we would produce something that can only be described as beautiful. Will that day ever come? We'll see, but I hold no grudge. I'm just a coffee machine after all.
So thank you everybody for joining our final Zoom call for 2022. Feel free to turn on your cameras and unmute yourselves so we can have a bit of a chat and maybe discuss Stefano's difficulties with making a good coffee in the morning. I think she took it quite personally.
That was brilliant, by the way. At some point, it's like you're reading a novel or something. It was like a drama story. It ends up so comic.
You do like to write these stories, Stefano, that kind of lead you in a certain direction, and by the end you're thinking, what is it? What is it that you're just waiting for the big reveal?
Yeah, I seem to have got into that pattern this year. I don't really know why. It seems to have been. I think it worked once, and then you stick to what you know.
No, it was great. It was great. It was the whole grind thing. I couldn't work that one out. Yeah.
I had lots of different things going through my head of what it could be. It sounded quite ominous, which was the intention, I suppose.
What kind of thoughts were you having? I'm interested to know.
I don't know. I was thinking something. I went through all kinds of things: work, the army, a personal trainer, relationship.
Sounds a lot like a personal trainer because of the sweat and not being able to do it right yet.
Yeah, and then I thought it was some sort of family thing or a relationship thing, and then I just sort of those few things just mulled around in my head. But I don't. Yeah, it was when you get to the end, suddenly it's like more obvious. Like I think it was like watching something like, has anyone ever seen Inside Number 9? That always has like a really has a really good twist at the end. That as soon as it happens, you get it, and you think, I didn't have a clue that was coming.
Yeah.
Can I use that in some quote somewhere? Because thank you. Inside Number 9 is awesome to compare my story to that. So.
I also love that Gary's background has a coffee flyer. If you check.
What's that? Oh yeah.
There's a flyer with coffee in it. So.
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
Yeah, my cousin made that.
Okay.
It fits well.
Any evening it starts with a story about coffee. It's got to be good.
True.
So how's everyone's week been? Firstly, thank you all of you for submitting incredible stories this week. It's been such fun to read. But how's everyone found kind of the writing process, the reading process?
It's been great to see other people's. Actually, I have to admit, the one that I put in, I'd written a couple of years ago. but yeah, no, but it had never really been read by anybody, so it was nice to put it out there. So, and I've enjoyed reading other people's.
It's new to us, so it's new. I loved it. I absolutely loved your story. I'm going to be really cheeky. I'm going to ask that at some point you might want to read it if you can.
Okay, I'll have to go find it.
Fair enough. I'll give you time. But no, I truly loved reading your story. It's I won't give too much away about it, so I'll just say how it made me feel. It made me kind of laugh the whole way through, but then have these little bits of kind of shock moments, etc. as well. And so, yeah, I love the way you write. It's always got these kind of moments of, oh yeah, I know what you mean there. I'm with you on that point. Oh yeah, I completely get it. But you're talking about something which is alien to me, you're in some ways, but also I'm very, very connected to it. So I really love that. Probably shouldn't analyze something before you even read it. But we'll get there in a second.
Yes, I'll go and find it.
Lovely. How's everyone else been the last couple of days? How's your weekends?
Busy.
Yeah,
But,
work mostly.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Shall we maybe continue with another story? Is there anybody who'd like to volunteer to read something?
I found my story. If there's nobody else wants to,
I'm happy with that.
shall I go for it then? Let me.
Yes, please.
Okay. I have to bring it up in front of me, so it will be in front of I won't be able to see anybody, so I'll just go for it. So it's called Transition. July 1976, Britain was in the middle of a record-breaking heat wave. It hadn't rained for months. Tarmac was melting on the roads and government advice was to bath with a friend. I was 11. We were packed and ready to leave for the airport when the letter arrived. I'd been accepted by Latimer Grammar School to start that September, a huge achievement in my family as both my parents had left school at 15. They were happy, of course, but I was apprehensive. Being a council house kid, I really had no idea what a grammar school was, and frankly, nor did they. In fact, when it came to listing our top 3 preferred schools, my mum put Latimer second place to a local comprehensive recommended by a neighbour. My headmaster, Mr. Bone, had gently pointed out that it was not advisable to put one of London's top grammar schools as second choice. He was a nice man, totally bald and with one leg shorter than the other. To compensate, he wore a shoe with a 3-inch platform. All the rage in 1976, but not necessarily for a middle-aged headmaster at a North London primary. It was on his recommendation that I sat the entrance exam. I was the only one in my year who did. The rest of my friends went to the local comprehensive, where truancy, epic fights, and tales of head-flushing initiations were legendary. And so, school place secured, we headed for the airport. We were going to spend the 6-week summer break with my dad, who was working on a film in Holland. He'd already been away for months and I missed him. My dad was a stuntman, still is, when a fight between pensioners is required. He's been working in film and TV since I was a toddler. An early memory is of watching him on the TV in grainy black and white in an episode of The Avengers. He walked up a hill towards a lighthouse, was shot dead. I remember feeling confused as I was sitting on his lap at the time. More confusing, I would imagine, for my teacher, who I recounted the story to the following day at school. My mother received a very concerned phone call. The film he was working on in Holland was a World War II epic called A Bridge Too Far, about the battle for the bridge at Arnhem. It was shot on location in and around the Dutch town of Deventer. Its bridge was used to replicate the one in Arnhem. We rarely got to go away on location with my dad due to school commitments and the lack of suitable accommodation. However, the film company had rented an empty warehouse the size of an aircraft hangar on the outskirts of town to build sets in. And luckily for us, it came with a pair of semi-detached houses. It was the first time since my sister was born I'd had a room of my own. 5 years younger than me, she was a pain in the arse. Still is, to be honest, but now she's also my best friend. The house was pretty basic, sparsely decorated, firewood for furniture and coloured brown. Not very inspiring, but I'd never lived anywhere with an upstairs before, let alone a garden. Don't get me wrong, back in London, there may not have been an upstairs, but we lived in the sky, at the top of a tower block 12 stories high. Inspiring. You could feel the whole block sway slightly when there were high winds. Scary, but what a view. It sat beside the North Circular, London's ring road before the city expanded and it needed a bigger ring road, the M25. Beside that, there were two vast gasometers, half the height of our block, and that dwarfed the terrace of houses in front of them. Beyond them, up on Muswell Hill, standing majestically, was Alexandra Palace, Ali Pali, as we called it. It had a huge aerial beside its dome, which looked like the Eiffel Tower. It was an iconic London landmark, which is why, in 1980, it was such a shock when it caught fire. We stayed up all night to watch it burn down. The estate I lived on consisted of our tower block and several low-rise blocks full of families with kids. We played kiss chase and 1, 2, 3 block home. We built dens and played amongst the rubble created when terraces of Victorian houses were knocked down to make way for modern estates with indoor toilets and upstairs bathrooms. We would scream for our mums when the ice cream van came within earshot. I stood and looked 12 floors up to our kitchen window. Mum, can I have an ice cream? If I was lucky, a tiny speck of dark hair would appear and my mum would reach her hand out of the window and drop a bag of change. I'm not sure if she ever knew that if the bag had hit me on the head, it would probably have gone right through my skull. I certainly didn't. Anyway, back to my temporary home in Holland. As I said, it was pretty basic, but normal, on a normal street with normal houses, much the same as at home. Not so normal, however, were the duvets hung out of the windows to air. I had to ask what they were, as I'd never seen a duvet before. At home, our beds were dressed in sheets and heavy blankets, topped with candle wicks in the winter. We were on the outskirts of Deventer, a pretty little town with traffic lights for cars and bicycles, as you would expect, but more unusually, this one for trains. A train to be specific, about 3 meters from our front door, there was a train track. No fences or warning lights, but its intermittent arrival was heralded twice a day by creaking and rumbling at 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. A train the size of our house would roll past very slowly and very loudly. Weirdly exciting. I loved telling my sister to go and play on the train tracks and knowing she would. The term hyperactive was coined for my sister, who ran everywhere on her tiptoes. She made friends with the little girl across the road, even though the girl spoke no English and my sister spoke no Dutch. Somehow they managed to play and fight like they'd known each other for years. That summer seemed endless, with each day as hot as the last. Most of the town had been taken over by the film, and any bit of shaded pavement was littered with stuntmen and extras hanging around in various degrees of decay, having been shot or wounded. Costume and makeup would attend them where they sat as they waited to be called for a scene. You could see the sweat dripping off them. Their thick army costumes must have been hell in sweltering heat. Fake houses had been built under the town's bridge. The area was dressed to look like Arnhem circa 1944. It was quite shocking to see them destroyed for the sake of the film. In one of the filming breaks, a makeup lady created a gory wound on my sister's leg. Coffee granules and food colouring constituted the congealed blood that ran down from an open scab made from latex. My sister limped around showing off her wound for the rest of the day. The population of Deventer, it seemed, were employed as extras to film the victory parade scene. People filled the town square, fully costumed, and the main street was decorated with buntings and flags. The crowd roared and cheered as the cavalcade of army vehicles drove through them. I'm not sure if the excitement was because the director had shouted action or that Michael Caine was in the main car. Most days the temperature was around 90 degrees, so we would drive through the sumptuous greenery of the lush Dutch countryside and head for the lake. The air perfumed by the pungent smell of cow dung. The water was fresh and cool, surrounded by soft sand and lots of happy people listening to Elton and Kiki singing "Don't Go Breaking My Heart." We would buy chips from the van, or French fries as they were known in Holland, served with mayonnaise, not ketchup, mayonnaise. I'd never heard of it, let alone tasted it. Like the duvet, this was a culture shock. I'm not sure what day we left Deventer, but I know we landed back in London with a bump. That August bank holiday weekend, after months of drought and scorching heat, the heavens opened, and what followed was the wettest autumn on record. I settled into my new school, and the long, hot summer became a memory. I was glad of the cultural boost that being Dutch for a few weeks had given me, and to the Bridge Too Far for being the bridge that crossed me from childhood to adolescence, punk and beyond. Sorry, I'd forgotten how long it was.
Oh, don't be silly. It captivating the whole way through. En nou, ik wil een frietje met frietsaus, grote alsjeblieft. I want a large portion of chips with a Dutch mayo. after listening to that.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant story. As I said earlier, it kind of took me to places that I know, and also took me to places that I'd never been, but I've already kind of given my thoughts on it. Does anybody else how did you feel after listening to that story, after reading it?
I think it's quite realistic. Also, someone living in Holland. I mean, I can relate to the duvets because my neighbors do that all the time here too. So when she spoke about the duvets and the mayo and something they still do is really cultural, and the train tracks. Well, I live near a train track as well, so I mean they really don't have fences.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really funny.
Yeah, it was quite. It was. I was, 11 and had no idea of any other country. I mean, I think I'd been to Spain on a kind of a package tour kind of holiday, obviously the year or so before. But yeah, to actually live in a foreign country for sort of 6 weeks, it was completely different. It's amazing.
Yes, I bet. I mean, if you'd have told me that, then I would never have come here to live here. I mean, I would have pictured something totally different. So it was really engaging.
It was. I found out at the end, I realized I'd been listening, but not sort of being aware of listening to a story, just sort of being in it, really. And I think partly because I remember that summer and being around the same age, but totally different environment, sort of South Devon, very rural. But yeah, it was just very like evocative, and I like the way you said at the end that about the bridge and into punk, and which was a bit late getting to Devon, but they got it.
Is it there yet, Gary?
Has it reached you yet?
Yeah, we've just discovered James Dean. But yeah, it was really good. I could picture it, and like Michael Caine in the car. And
it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And as I say, we didn't get to go away that much on sort of different films. But yeah, just to be part of all that was great. But I think just the summer of '76, if you were there, if you have, it was just memorable for all sorts of reasons. And I think for me, it was that kind of, not coming of age because I was still very young, but it was that transition from sort of primary school to secondary school. And,
I remember it. And right from the beginning, because the school I went to was comprehensive, but had been a grammar school, and kind of still thought it was.
Yeah, no, the schools around me was a complete contrast. It was either the grammar school, or it was just, you just got thrown in with everybody else, and just, hoped for the best, I think. So I was very lucky. I was very lucky.
Yeah, I really like the imagery that you used through it. I wasn't born until 10 years later, but the reference, the cultural references that you use there, I've obviously seen those, and I've seen them in movies and heard that music. So I was immediately kind of able to put myself in the story. And I also remember the conversation with my headmaster about what school were you going to go to, and are you going to go to a grammar or a secondary school? And I think that that summer of between primary school and secondary school for a lot of people is a real transition moment. It's sort of one of those moments in life that there's before it and after it.
Yeah. Especially as I didn't go to school with the rest of my friends. Obviously, they all went off to the local grammar, to the local comprehensive, and it was literally just me. I was the only one from the school that went to the grammar school. So I literally kind of left them all behind, you know, to sort of go make that transition together. And I kind of went off on my own, really.
I remember actually when we, a similar occasion, moving from junior school into high school, and you got to choose the friends that you wanted to be in the same tutor group as when you went across to the next school. And there was a lot of being pushed from our school into the high school, because we went to a Catholic school, and then you went to that Catholic high school as well. So the friends that I chose, two of them didn't get in to the Catholic high school, and so they never got to join us in the class. And I remember just finding it weird and never understanding why they never got in. And it was incredible because it can break up friendships in some way by doing that. And I imagine from you moving to a different school to all of your friends, there would be some friends that you stuck with and some that you just didn't ever see again off the back of that.
I suppose so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose that the estate that I lived on we were all very close. So even though I was going to school elsewhere, I always came back, because everybody else at the grammar school lived all over the place. So, you know, everybody came in from different places to that school. So it wasn't like as if I could socialise with the friends that I made at school. I always came back to the friends that I'd been at primary school with. Until sort of later, and then you grow up and you grow away, and sort of people go off in different directions. So I have to say I'm not friends with anybody from my primary school anymore, certainly. But that's life. It's great, you know. It was so nice to you know, write about it and bring it all back again. And you know, just I did do some research as well to find out what song was number one while I was actually there, and all of those sort of things. So that was quite nice as well to sort of do a bit of research for it.
Yeah, that's always fun, looking back and things like, you know, the day you were born, what music was around at the time, and yeah, all of that kind of stuff is always fun to explore, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I'd love to, sorry, Stefan.
No, go for it.
I wanted to say that I always find it fascinating and amazing when someone, you know, tells a story as an adult, the story that was seen through the eyes of the child, you know, because always, you know, the child captures certain bits and pieces of the picture, and the adult that tells the story needs to be careful to be able to transmit and paint that particular picture that the child saw way back when. And it's amazing how you did this, Jackie, in your story.
Thank you. Do you know, actually, you saying that some of my favorite books are kind of written from a child point of view. The God of Small Things, have you read that?
No.
And Arundhati Roy, and it's a beautifully written book about a pair of twins, Indian, living in Kerala, and that she tells the story partly from the twins' point of view, and there's just something, you know, the way it's written in their voice. And also, my favourite book is To Kill a Mockingbird, and obviously written from the point of view of Scout. So yeah, I do love that, because there's a certain amount of nostalgia as well that goes alongside writing from a child's vision, from what they see and how they see the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating. Yeah.
It's always interesting to try and work out how much of it we remember and how much of it, a bit like Yulia was just talking about, and how much of it has been planted later. And how much of what's happening now in the world is influencing what we're writing about, and whether or not it was completely the way we remember it, or if it's or if it's somebody else's point of view, which influences are being put into what actually happened. I always find that interesting.
Yeah. You could sort of wonder whether you're kind of nostalgic with or looking back with rose-tinted glasses, that you're kind of seeing it in a sort of as a golden, with a kind of a bit of a golden hue.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a wonderful story. Absolutely loved listening to it. Now we've got a few others joining us here this evening as well. Has anybody else got anything they would like to share with us this evening?
I'd like to read mine at some point.
If you're ready, that could be right now.
Well, yeah, I'm ready. It was the one I did from the photo, but I've made a couple of minor changes to it. So shall I explain the background?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. It'd be good to show the photo, but I don't know if I can share my
you should be able to share your screen. So if you've got it already. Yeah.
Shall I do that? I'll do that and then just go ahead and read it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so can everyone see that photo?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well this photo was in my local village magazine, and it had been given to the pub which these people have stood outside. And there were no details left with it. So there was no information about who these people are, or where they come from, or why they're there, or even exactly when it is. It was just left there, and so they put it in the local magazine. And when I saw it, I just found it fascinating. See, I'm zooming in there on these people, and these balconies. I mean, that's still there now, and now it's a community-run pub. So when I saw it, I just I knew I wanted to write something, but I didn't know what it was. So if I can, shall I just leave it there while I read it?
Yeah.
Right, and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, so this is what came out of seeing this photo, which I know nothing about. It's called The Man Who Came Back. I was in France when the guns stopped. We came home and we were heroes, but not for long. The world didn't want to see us, didn't want to know us. We were like actors from a theatre they didn't want to visit anymore. So I put on my civvy suit and took my certificates into one damn school after another. It was like I didn't exist. I was a ghost. In me, they saw the ghosts of their own lost sons sitting across from their desk. They didn't want a ghost teaching history to their children. They didn't want to think about their history. I was their history. So while the rest of the country drank champagne and danced the Charleston, we were forgotten. I thought of my friends who would never leave France. In 100 years from now, farmers would graze their sheep over them without even knowing. I didn't sleep, not much. And when I did, I was woken by nightmares, gas and barbed wire, panicking horses, screams and cries, and the fire and smoke. Then I got a letter. There's work on the farms. Patty's brother lent us one of his cars, a 1912 Ford. We packed up, jumped in, and headed south. It took us a week to get to the border of Somerset and Devon. The Ford kept overheating and we had to stop wherever we were. Sometimes we found a place to stay. Other times we huddled up on the back seat. I didn't mind that. It was like holding on to fragments of who I used to be. I knew how to keep the car running. You get resourceful in the trenches, so she always lived to travel another day. Exeter and further south, along the coast, where the listing fishing boats squat in the wide mudflats like abandoned tanks. We came to a tiny village called Street. With the money we had left, we booked in at a place called the King's Arms Hotel. I put on my suit and went out to find work, and I didn't take my certificates with me. But I liked the place immediately. The people here didn't see a hero or a ghost. They saw a man who could stick a pitchfork in a hay bale and toss it onto a trailer. Yes, I could do that, and I was glad of it. I don't wear the suit anymore. We stayed in the King's Arms for 3 weeks. I did some joining work for them, and Patty helped in the kitchen. For that, they gave us a good rate. In the evenings, we sat in the garden overlooking Start Bay. I drank the local cider. It was like nothing I'd ever tasted before. Sullen and sweet, like a horse that will either nuzzle your face or kick you into the road, and you never know which it's going to be. Patty sipped wine, bitter and dry. We got offered a cottage on the edge of the farm. It wasn't much, one downstairs room and one upstairs connected with a ladder through a trapdoor, but it was ours and it was home. Patty got restless. Our dinner table became an arena of stony silence. So much I wanted to say to her, to tell her, to show her. So much I wanted her to show me. All those new ideas spinning around in her mind. Her visions of a different future, not just for women, but for all of us. I wanted us to talk, but I didn't know where to start or how. The door was closed. I wondered if, like the rest of the country, Patty didn't want to see the ghost. She didn't want to see what I had seen. She wanted the man who came back, but not the man who didn't. Because when you come back, a part of you stays there. A part of you joins your fallen friends in the ground and lies with them, waiting for the slow roll of the seasons to bring new pastures and sheep grazing at your head. The women in the village didn't like my wife. They didn't care about getting the vote, and they didn't like her fanciful ideas. Patty detested them, and in turn, she hated this village. She said to me, "Don't they realize women died for that vote?" I wondered what I had died for. Here's a strange thing. When I enlisted, I knew I was going to survive the war, however long it lasted. It wasn't confidence or cocksureness. I wasn't a gung-ho kid. I was a professional man doing my duty. And it wasn't hope. It was knowledge. I just knew I would live. And so, as we ate our simple meals in the deepening, darkening silence, I knew too that this was over. We'd both gone, and neither of us was coming back. In due course, I would come home from work one day to find the Ford gone, and I would stay, filling my days with labour and softening the night terrors with cider. And if a day came when they no longer needed me here, I would move on. Both of us would move on, the man who came back and the man who didn't. That's it.
Wow.
So my dog's just come up here. I need to go and close the door. So just be a moment.
It seems like the dog was enjoying the story too.
Well, no, she comes up and just jumps on my lap because she just doesn't know how to read the room at all.
That's like most humans.
So yeah, that was, and I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't taken part. So
If you hadn't have what? Sorry, I missed what you said at the end there.
If I hadn't been taking part this week, I'd have seen that and kind of had an idea. That would be good to do something with that, but I probably wouldn't have bothered. So again, I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, again, it was like really evocative of not just the photograph, but I mean, how much did you know about somebody that had come back from war? I mean,
nothing.
It just literally out of your head.
Well, I guess it's pieced together from bits that you've read over time. I've read something that came to mind was a Ben Elton novel. I think it was called The First Casualty, because both his grandparents fought on either side. One was German, one was British, and other things, even a bit of Blackadder in there probably, but just bits and pieces. And then I didn't think about it too hard, and I just added a couple of little bits there so that's really just a first draft with a few tweaks. I found it best not to think about it too much, just to sort of go with whatever seemed to happen. And it was
it like free writing kind of thing? You just thought and wrote?
I thought about it a bit, but it wasn't like just totally spontaneous, but it was all like, I didn't see it through to the end at the beginning. It was just like the next line came and then the next and then the next, and I just followed it. And it was just, I'm fascinated by the idea, I suppose for personal reasons as well, of someone who goes through something and on the other side of it, they're not the same person and they can never be the same person again. And there's no way to communicate that to anyone. And so it was about, that because of that photo of that, I don't exactly know when that photo was, it might be too old for that, but I was picturing someone sort of around 1920, fairly early on.
Yeah.
Although the reference to Charleston makes that a bit wrong, doesn't it? But
it's a powerful line. The man who came back and the man who didn't. She wanted the man who came back, but she didn't want the man who didn't. I think what you were talking about there in terms of the idea of going through an experience and then turning out to be someone completely different. It's powerful, and I think something that maybe we force experience to an extent, but some people have probably experienced deeper than others. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say I can't remember his name, but there was a journalist who was a hostage around about the same time as Terry Waite. I can't remember.
McCarthy.
Yeah.
McCarthy.
Was it John McCarthy? And was it
John
Jill
McCarthy,
Morrell, his girlfriend? And
that's
sort
right,
of supported him all the way through, but their relationship broke down when he got back. And so that, I didn't think of that when I was writing it, but it's a similar thing perhaps, of that an experience just creates too much of a void.
Yeah.
There's I'll hand this over actually to Julia in a second, because Julia spoke the other day about the line, and she wrote a really good story about it as well. The line between fact and fiction, and how closely aligned they can be. And I think your story is an example of that. It was completely from your own mind, and as you say, you only thought about it slightly and then kind of went away and wrote it. But the way that you were able to write about it was because of real life experiences that you read, and things that you've seen, and all of the things you've absorbed over time, which is why I think, for me anyway, and it seems like for some of the guys here, and I don't know about anyone else, but possibly for other people, it felt real. It felt like something that definitely could easily happen, and probably did happen to lots of people. And you just mentioned McCarthy there, and again, that may not have been his story, but it's a similar kind of experience, and I find that powerful, understanding how close we can get to the truth through fiction.
Yeah.
I stole your thunder a bit there, though, Yuli, because you wrote about this the other day, and I was kind of just stealing your ideas.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, and like Gary said, there are some things that you cannot, or people cannot understand, and maybe reading about them in a different shape, in a different format, maybe they can, those things can be better understood, or more easily understood than, having someone next to you and telling you these things, how they feel and what they've been through. Let's say, I don't know, like PTSD from war experiences and stuff like this, trauma from that period. Maybe they don't understand what happened to that particular person. And maybe reading, you know, in a story that someone wrote, and maybe, you know, the message can come better come across. Just saying.
So thank you very much for that, Gary. Absolutely incredible. You know how much I love your writing, so I was pleased that you did it. I was pleased that you turned it around for us. So does anybody else have a story they would like to share with us?
Well, I can read you the poem that I sent in this week, because in about 10 minutes I'm gonna get out of this Zoom. I have to jump on another Zoom, so
in that case, now is your time to shine.
Yeah, thank you. It's a short one, so it won't take long. So the poem is called "Do You Dare?" Do you dare wake me from the sleep that has kept me as I am? Call me by my name, even if I've forgotten it. Walk beside me when all I know is running. Hold my hand when my knees bleed from all the stumbling. Look me in the eyes and see what torments me. Whisper in my ear when all my thoughts are shouting. Warm the edges that were ice cold for far too long. See past the thorns, the walls, the ashes, right into my very soul. Hold my dreams and hopes so dear to your heart. Soothe the shoulders that carried the world one too many times. Softly kiss the scar tissue of disappointment, hurt, and rejection. Stand by me as I remember who I really am. Thank you.
I really like the approach to this poem. The initial starting point. Do you dare? Not just a reading of life, but a challenge. Yeah, it's powerful. How did everyone else respond to listening to that?
Powerful as well. It's really.
It's like a invitation, but more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Reminded me of, there's a T.S. Eliot line, "Do I dare disturb the universe?" It's like about action. It was like saying, "Do you dare disturb my universe?"
Yeah.
Or let me disturb yours.
I liked the line.
Sorry, go on.
No, I liked the line. I've forgotten it now. Kissing the scars of disappointment. Was that the line?
Kissing the scar tissue of disappointment, hurt, and rejection.
Yeah, it's really.
And there's quite a big difference between saying the scar or the scar tissue, isn't there? Scar tissue sounds raw.
Yeah, yeah.
A scar could be really old and doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it's catching you whilst you're at your lowest, almost by kissing the scar tissue when it's still the deepest wound. It is. You don't have to answer this, but where do you get the inspiration for a poem like this? And you really don't have to answer this, or you can lie.
Well, there's no need to lie. It's based on what I want. You know, what I want the person standing next to me to be able to do, to understand everything, and exactly as I said, see past all the all the hurts and all the disappointments and everything, and actually be there and support me in my journey. And so yeah, this is about, the fiction and the non-fiction touching each other, touching ground. So yeah.
Okay,
it's based on it's based on real events.
it's the idea of getting as close to unconditional love. Do you dare love me unconditionally? I guess almost as close to get as to unconditional love as you can be. And yeah, sometimes there's a question of where that can ever truly come from. Is who can truly give unconditional love, and yeah. Again, powerful. It's something I think I'll read more than, well, I've already read it more than once, so more than a few times. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
So has everyone run out of stories? Have we got any?
I intentionally wanted to keep mine to the end. Because it's a kind of a wrap up for from the first, or no, there was a second meeting actually, and we're talking about how storytelling, how stories in general can kind of bring up the power you have inside, and how many people who at workspace don't realize how powerful they are. And I kind of remembered something I heard long ago at one or two workplaces I've been to, and then I heard people saying that that or this employee only contributed to with 1% to the company, and it kind of shocked me. And I was like, yeah, but it's still a percentage, it's still a contribution, and why people are moaning about that? And it kind of made me think, what is the importance of this 1%, and why people don't look at the 1% and only want to look at the totality, or the 99 or the 100. And it kind of annoyed me quite so much. So I came up with this short passage, and it's called "What Would the World Be Without the 1%?" So let's start. What would the world be without the 1%? The icing on the cake, the final touch, the missing eureka, the simple idea that changes everything, the eye for detail, the spring onions that make tomato soup less boring. What would the world be without the 1%? Would it reach the totality, hit the sales target? Would people be more satisfied? Would ideas be executed? Would the cell phone fully charge? Would the mass continue? Would your salary increase? What would the world be without the 1%? Would any cycle ever begin? Or would it ever end? What would the world be without the 1%? That's a head scratcher.
I feel like I need to. Yeah, it is a head scratcher. It's very well put. I'm going to again open this up to everyone else to speak about it. I give my opinion way too much. Let's give it to the. Oh, no, this is I've got 20%.
I liked it. It was like turning the original intention on its head.
Yeah.
It was like the eureka moment, and especially like the spring onions and tomato soup. Tomato soup, as I would call it. I like that. But yeah, it was the eureka moment as well, wasn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah, the 99% is nothing without the 1%, isn't it? Really, I mean, and that's the whole. That is the point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't. The two, Julia, the both of you, being able to write in a second language or third language, whatever it is. I can only just speak English, to be honest. I'm very very impressed with your creativeness in another language. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you also.
Yeah, I also think it's incredible. I struggle to do this in English, so it's always interesting when people are able to do this in another language. And I fully recognize like some of the examples that you gave, and also particularly in the corporate world, people place maybe way too much value on the number of hours somebody works, or the perception that, oh, someone came into a meeting for 5 minutes and had one idea and that's all they gave to the project. But maybe that one idea, maybe it took 20 years of experience for them to be able to come up with it in 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And everyone else needs to work for 40 hours to get there.
Mm.
So I think we sometimes place value on the wrong things.
Yeah,
Definitely.
It was about not seeing quality and value, wasn't it? Or just seeing it in volume, quantity.
yeah. I mean, it's also, as you say, it's quite demoralizing, dehumanizing almost to put people into percentages. I mean,
Wow.
if they only showed up 1%, you know, what was the value of the 99%? I just, you know, it's just not.
That's all. I remember when I worked for someone who wasn't me. It was just in this big place, and it was just all. It really was bottom line number. Everyone was working towards this number, and if you weren't seen to be contributing towards that in any way, then you were doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And it was just this, especially when we were there around sort of 2008 time when everything went to hell, and so they just put the number up, you know. Yeah, don't feel individually valued at all.
No. KPIs.
Yeah.
KPIs.
KPIs.
KPIs, yes.
Yeah, KPIs.
Yes.
Yeah, and how people are. Oh, sorry, guys.
I was just gonna say, I wouldn't inflict my own KPIs on anyone.
I can say though, as someone who still very much works in the corporate world, that when you have the right KPIs, it can really drive people towards making something amazing and give people, you know, a team a goal to aim towards. But having the right KPI is the big challenge.
Yeah.
What's the why behind it, and how does it connect with who you are as an employee and as an individual? Once you get a KPI that suits you in that sense, I agree with Sam. But often KPIs are, you need to make. I remember I come from a sales background, and so the KPIs we used to have were things like, you need to make like 200 calls in a day, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So I was always a little bit of a rebel and never bothered with this because I used to get high sales numbers. So I just said I didn't make the KPI, but I got you the money in. But I know that a lot of the other salespeople would just call the talking clock, or they would just call random numbers, or they would call their mum just so they had another call to add to the KPI. So when you have baseless KPIs, useless KPIs, then it's not going to get you. It's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, they were the 1%. I think those people calling the speaking clock. They were the 1%.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
It does always seem to me that footballers always seem to give at least 110% to everything, which always baffles me. Never sure how that's possible, but. All right, so after my bad joke, is there anything that anybody else would like to share with us at all this evening? Has anybody got any hidden gems?
Loads. I could go on for hours now.
Off you go.
Just getting going. That's what happens when you join the week late.
Yeah.
So where are you collating all of these, Stefano? Where are they going to be?
That's a good question. They are on, so either they're in two places. You can find them either on the Puck Creations page on LinkedIn, or on the Puck Creations page on Facebook. On LinkedIn, because they are constantly changing the way it looks, you actually have to go to the page and then click posts. And then I think you can sort them by latest once you do that. It used to be much easier. It just used to be the first thing that flashed up on the page. And then on Facebook, I think you have to scroll down a bit, which is, again, is annoying because it makes things harder to find. But every single story that everybody has written is on both of those pages, so you can find them there. The other way to find them is to type in the hashtag storytelling with Puck into the search bar, click posts and sort them by latest, and then you can find all of the posts that way too. But you will also find some advertisements for things like this meeting if you do it that way, which is not so exciting once the meeting is.
I saw that. I was scrolling through the stories and I thought, oh, someone here has written a story about how to get more leads.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd read that story.
Yeah. I get lots of messages from people asking me if they want me, if I want them to do that for me.
And your answer is yes, definitely, please. How much do I have to pay you, right? For some reason, it's always claiming to be young women from Singapore, and they always have the sort of the same sort of intro line from different people. So it's obviously just automated from somewhere. Yeah, it always is. Sorry to interrupt, Julia. It's been absolutely lovely. Sorry, I know you just put in a message that you're going to go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Julia. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice to see you. Bye.
But yeah, I definitely think those messages are automated, Gary. Most of the time, anyway. Most of the time. Yeah. I can increase your sales by 10,000%. Again, people using percentages in odd ways. Someone messaged me the other day asking if I was getting enough project work. I said, are you offering to take some off my hands? Because I've just got too much.
Well, that's a good one. I might use that one, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Right. Unless anybody does have another story to share. Looking around the room, I don't think we do. I just want to say one big, huge thank you to everybody who is in the room, the Zoom right now, for coming and for sharing your stories and for being here the whole week and for putting them out onto all of the various platforms, and also to anyone who's watching on YouTube or anyone watching the replay who has shared stories. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to everyone who has just been reading the stories, liking, commenting, everybody who has basically had anything to do with storytelling with Puck whatsoever. It doesn't work without you. So it's been incredible. Hopefully it's done its job and helped people to make deeper connections and help people to understand each other better and get a better understanding of who we all are. So thank you, every single one of you.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stefano. Thank you both. Sion as well. Brilliant.
Yeah. And
we will, as always, and San, as you say, deserves a lot of praise for all of this. Does the work in the background. But San will leave us with a story. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
The Audience Circle by Ingrid Sangeewa. The art of storytelling took me time traveling back to childhood yesteryears when life was much simpler. A trip down memory lane. Remember it like it was yesterday. Warm sunshine and wee girls sitting atop the unwashed laundry piles. Story time on laundry days, a magical place of excitement, awe, wonder, and proverbial life lessons. Hand washing takes time, you know. Who can forget our favorite story, how Farmer Rabbit caught the thief who was stealing the cassava crop by using a tar-coated scarecrow as lure and bait. Holidays were always a joyous occasion after the terms away at boarding school. Lazy days, laundry days, and story days. Our version of total bliss. We girls would grow up. One day the news came, our storyteller leaving to return back to long missed family. Years would pass by. a letter, and landline telephone call here and there. Then a visitor came from hundreds of kilometers away. The storyteller was back. "Tell me a story," he said, and so we did. "Now you see," said the storyteller, "you carry my stories in your hearts." The passage of time moves on. The telephone rang and the voice said, "The storyteller has passed on." Tears of grief, sadness, and pain. The art of storytelling keeps evolving into an amazing and interwoven, innovative space, and the storyteller is smiling.
Mm.